I know we've done a lot of these like virtually, but this is the first sort of in-person one. So I definitely wanted to jump right in as far as just the overall state of credit restoration. But before we get into that, I want to just dig a little bit into your experience in the credit space for those who don't know who you are and, how you're able to get such great results and how you've been able to build up the number one credit restoration business in the United States with best results, hands down. Where did this wealth and knowledge come from?
I've been doing this for about 25 years. And it happened. I worked for a company called Choice Point, and I was trying to get a job there, and they had 3 different criteria. One of them was background check, credit check, and the drug test. And I failed 2 criteria, and one was the credit check. And lo and behold, it was the secrets of fixing credit when they sent me to HR and they said, hey, you gotta go back and dispute these items. And they were a sister company of EQUIFAX. And so when they gave me that pamphlet and I looked up like, oh my gosh, this is really everything that I need to make this thing happen. And it's a game changer. Fast forward to today, it's changed tremendously. It's come back in the days when I did credit bureau, it just was something verbal. Now it's AI, it's different technology. So it's a different game piece. So
I know we've been working for probably the past 5 years or so. And even in that time period, I've learned a lot from you and saw some of the differences. And when I was really looking into credit restoration, right? So one of the things that I try to do, I went to the internet and I saw all the information that's out there. And there was a lot about these templates, Section 609 and all of that. And I literally tried everything, right? I was on this journey of wanting to fix my own credit and nothing happened, right? And you and I were talking about this earlier, how, and I've shared this with the audience, how I went through this whole journey of trying to figure out how do I get more access to credit? Because I saw how credit basically was a main contributor to the quality of life, right? Whether getting an apartment, getting jobs. I worked in federal government contracting. Part of the security clearance, they pull your credit report. And you have to explain every late payment, collection, money that you owe. You have to explain that. So I saw how credit was like the main factor when it comes to quality of life as far as getting jobs, getting housing, or even transportation. That's why I wanted to fix my credit because like a lot of other people out there, they have these mistakes that have lingering effects. Right?
absolutely.
So I went through this journey trying to fix my credit because, of course, my biggest dilemma, and we've shared this, how I had these student loans
Right.
that even after I paid them off, they had late payments on it. So I worked with a handful of different credit restoration companies. I was going about the whole DIY process. And at the time, what was popular online was dispute templates. So talk about dispute templates. How has that changed over time, even in the last couple of years working with you? Because I know it doesn't always work the same. There's artificial intelligence now. What are some of the important considerations as far as the process of credit restoration now versus in times past?
Sure, absolutely. It's a quick question. So these days, it's really important for you to dispute the item on the customer's behalf as though it's the customer. That's very important. The Bureau want to know that it's the actual individual disputing the actual items under a court, not a credit repair agency. Because if they see that, what happens if it turns into a third-party letter that you get, it turns into frivolous information, frivolous dispute. It's really important to do your best to create the dispute as if it's the actual customer disputing the item.
But the credit reporting agencies don't want it to appear as though it's a third party. And the thing is, it's so funny. I see online, like a lot of people, they'll show like stacks of letters, hundreds of letters that going into the mail to send that out. I know years ago you talked about how once you start to scale, that became somewhat of an issue because you're sending all the same letters through our same post office.
The templates don't work. The templates no longer work. Even logging onto Equifax Experience and changing and clicking not mine, never late, things like that. That stuff doesn't work. It's become very meticulous. They know what's going on. They know that credit repair agencies exist, but they're doing a really good job of bouncing these things back. So that's what puts us in the game because we really know. I would say these days, the game changes every 2 or 3 months on how to do disputes. It really does. And what's really successful, our claim to fame is that we keep our ear to the ground. We have a secret sauce. I've hired a team called bureau callers that call on behalf of each client And we have amazing results because of it, because we just do this day in and day out.
Let's elaborate on that because I know sometimes people might send in disputes and they're wondering like what's going on? How come they haven't seen any traction with it? So even though the credit reporting agency may have received the dispute or they received the paperwork, there's just no movement on it. So talk about how the difference with the bureau callers and full and how we're able to resolve that.
Absolutely. So yeah, when we send out the document, these guys, the bureaus get so many disputes. And so what we do is we fortify that by calling the credit bureau and say, hey, my name is Mike Jackson. I am the actual consumer and I sent out this document. I want to confirm that these items have been sent out. Did you receive it? And so even moving forward to having the right terminology to get those items off with the disputes that have been set out. So it's just really actually communicating, having a conversation with them to actually pull up those documents and speak to those things. One of the most important things, besides the accounts that are on the file, is the public record information. That's really number one, because those things are connected to, they're called credit vendors. So those are things connected to the accounts and increase that you want to dispute. So we have to make sure those things are removed first before anything else. And after that, 70% of the job is done.
Yeah, that's a good point because I always thought like, for example, when you get these templates and it says this account does not belong to me, it's not mine, and it comes back verified because the information that's on the header is also the information that's on your credit report, such as your address. So if you're disputing account saying it's not mine, but credit headers have your name and address, and that's also on your credit report, and it's on the accounts that you're disputing them. And it's okay, there's multiple identifying marks that connect that account to you. That's a really important thing. I also wanted to talk about, because one of the things we get right is why is credit restoration so expensive, at least with our service? And it's for, like what you were just talking about, the bureau caller. If anyone's ever actually called in and waited to get connected with a Vibe representative, because of the volume of disputes coming in, people calling, it's usually a long wait, right? So if you're disputing a particular item, you have Equifax, transient, and Experian. Right? So the average wait time is what, 40 minutes, 45 minutes?
40 minutes, sometimes an hour, 2 hours late for one client. And one client asks per bureau. So you're doing the same thing for Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So they're waiting on the phone all day long just to dispute your file. And we have probably from 5,000 to 7,000 customers. At any given time, we probably have hundreds of people that sign up because our business is a referral-based business. So once you start seeing results, you're introducing me to your mom, your wife, your kid, your cousin, and so on and so forth. So we get a lot of traffic, but it's very meticulous. First of all, we have to create the document to make sure that the documentation is accurate, the names are accurate. And now with the bureaus, I think as of this year, they started implementing portals with TransUnion and Equifax. And there's new SMS technology that requires you to have access to SMS codes and things like that to get into the file. It makes it difficult for other credit repair agencies to do the job. So we have to overcome that. We've overcome that. Getting SMS text codes, portals, but the portals are very sophisticated in that they're very specific in how you do the dispute for them to be effective. Communicating with you, the client. We have the customer service team. We have, like I shared with you, bureau callers. We have individuals that call on behalf of female customers and male customers. And we have weekly meetings to discuss all the new internal challenges and workarounds and solutions to being the best in the nation. But it is a very meticulous, sophisticated process to do the job. But as you see at Credit Plug, we come out with nothing but results.
Absolutely. Week in, week out. We've been showing this for years now. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you about, as far as your opinion. Now, we hear a lot about AI, artificial intelligence, right? There's a ton of apps out now that, are basically they're able to read in the credit report, identify the derogatory marks, and then create these unique AI scripted dispute letters. Given AI, do you think credit restoration is getting easier as far as getting results, or is it getting more difficult? Or do you think AI is going to be a game changer as far as the consumer and being able to dispute items on their credit report? Or do you think the credit reporting agencies are going to constantly come up with ways of making it more challenging? What do you think the role of AI is in credit restoration?
AI is great for creating efficiency. On the credit bureau side, you're able to use the technology to read the documents and move a lot more efficiency than to validate disputes and to deem them frivolous. On our side, it's good to make each document look as though they are from the actual individual and not make them duplicates, because templates don't work anymore. But on the human connection is a critical part. Speaking to an actual representative, waiting for them, that's really the secret sauce of speaking to them, knowing what to say to get these items to be removed from the file.
What I see a lot in the comment section, right? There might be someone who signed up later but got resolved quicker. Talk about, let's say, the disputes that are deemed frivolous, or maybe there's a file that has a lot of derogatory items. Sometimes you can't dispute everything all at once. So talk about sort of that strategy or the logic behind disputing in batches versus just disputing everything and how that affects the results. Because what I see sometimes, someone who might have a really dirty file, let's say 25 derogatory items, versus someone who might have 5 derogatory items, and they're seeing other people get results quicker, even though they may have started earlier, and they might be skeptical or hesitant. Talk about that first, why disputes are being frivolous and how they get classified as that. And in addition to that, why you can't dispute all 25, 30 items all in one.
It's a good question. So when we do disputes, it has to make sense. We're trying to paint a picture and tell a story. First thing we do is look at the public record information. Some customers may have 30, 40, 50 addresses. That has to go first, because a lot of those addresses are connected to accounts, name variations, phone numbers, that all of that has to be removed first before we even start disputing accounts, because they're all connected. So I would dispute no more than 5 to 7 items at a time, because it's all part of the story that you're telling to the credit bureau, saying that these items are not yours. So naturally, the chances of all the items not being yours is slim to none. So it's got to make sense. And then you just go with the flow of what the bureaus are doing, depending on how the disputes are coming off. That's how we make our decision on the next go around of disputes.
So do you think, is there a certain threshold you feel like where, okay, if it's X amount of accounts, you can dispute them all at once, or if you go beyond a certain number of derogatory accounts you need to dispute, then maybe batch them or do them at different moments of time?
Yeah, I would definitely batch them and do it different moments of time, because it's just, like I said, it's just, you don't want to seem suspicious when your disputes. It's got to make sense. Because the reality is these items that are on your file are more than likely yours. These are things that you created over time. You bought them. And so, what you're really having in reality is a second chance. So we don't want to take that for granted, right? We don't want to just say, okay, we can just delete these items and not pay these bills, pay these accounts. We definitely want to take accountability and use it as a second chance.
The other thing I wanted to highlight, sometimes it seems like credit repair, credit restoration is like a revolving door. We might come across the same client maybe every 6 months, every other year, even though they're able to get things off their credit report, they're able to get that fresh start at building relationships with banks. But it seems like nothing's changed. You're in that predicament again. And obviously it gets harder to dispute things once you've gone through that all over again multiple times. What's your message to that revolving door type of credit client, right? There's always needing credit restoration multiple times. Like, what's your message to them to get out of that rib?
First of all, funding, it now becomes a thing that pretty much all social media speaks about. You can find any channel talking about funding. So I wouldn't focus so much on the funding as much as I'd focus on what to do with the money. There's all different options. You can get into real estate, you can get into investment, you can get into franchising, you can get into Turo, right? But come up with a bona fide strategy first, because you got to pay the keys next step. You don't want to get into it with the mindset, I'm going to burn the bank, because in reality, there's only so many banks, right? And now these banks are merging. There's database is being created to see your habits, things that you've been doing. So to determine whether or not they should continue doing business with you. So it's only going to go so far before you hit a wall. So yeah, you can come back to us and continue cleaning your credit, but then you'll only have so many options to get funding.
The last point I wanted to talk about, Ray, now, and this is something that a lot of clients find themselves in, where we're able to get things removed off their credit report, but because there's so many accounts that are removed, then they're left with that thin file and are somewhat disappointed about their funding prospects, or unrealistic as far as what they can do as far as acquiring funding after they no longer have derogatory accounts on their credit report. What advice do you have to customers like that? And then the other thing is there's situations where to remove or account that have like high utilization, right? Even it might be in good standing, but it's on the verge of going into default, right? And it's a preemptive thing to get it removed so it's not affecting your DTI. What should people do in that situation where, okay, they had these accounts for several years in good standing, they're on the verge of default. Once it's removed, they're going to have to start all over from scratch. What should people do in that scenario? Should they figure out a way to pay down the debt so that they keep the history so that once the other accounts are removed, they can still qualify for funding because they have primary score? Should they just get the account removed? They start from scratch? What's your guidance? So
Once you do several things, i.e. make any late payments, go over the limits, uses all your relationship with the bank eternally, right? So you can pretty much call it quits. When you're asking for credit limit increases or any types of concessions, it'll be difficult for you to get them. So I would delete the account. In the case where a customer has multiple negative accounts and he now has a DIN file, or we can anticipate that he's going to have the DIN file, my suggestion is to start building primaries and authorize users. But you need to do those simultaneously while we're deleting those items from your file.
So a lot of people I notice, let's say, for example, they have an account, a credit card account. They may have had some late payments, some late marks on their credit report. Now the account is in good standing, but it still has the late marks and they want to keep the account. What should someone do in that situation?
Yeah. So, if the account is maybe 3 to 5 years from the date that the person made the late payment, then there's a certain forgiveness period. So it won't count against them as much as it would if it's less than 3 years. If it's less than 3 years and they need funding right away, we're going to delete the account. But if it's older than that, then, they'll be good to go.
So you think someone should keep an account with a late payment if, let's say, the late payment was from 4 years ago?
Correct.
Disputing the late payment versus removing the account entirely. What are the scenarios for each of those? And as far as the CP restoration, as far as like removing late, is that something that is feasible or something that you would recommend?
Yeah, we've tried to remove late payments in the past. We've been unsuccessful. It's a hit or miss. So it's easier for us just to remove the entire account. And shared leave, like I said earlier, the relationship is dissolved with the agency once you have late payments. I would remove the account if it's an account that's newer, and just replace it with a primary or an authorized user trade line.
And as far as like removing versus disputing the late payment, like if someone's just adamant, like they want to keep the account. I know you mentioned that's not the strategy as far as like it's harder to get the late payment reversed versus get the account removed. Is there a difference in the process?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference in the process. We would have to dispute the item with the actual creditor if it's a late payment. As far as removing the account itself, is directly with the bureau. That's the different path.
Excellent. So basically, you're trying to so essentially the creditor, the data furnisher, has the ultimate call as far as how the payment is reported, whether it's late or payment is agreed.
Yeah.
And that's something that I guess as a consumer, you have less of impact as far as determining how that's going to play out. I've heard a lot about goodwill letters. I've tried those personally. It never worked. I'm not sure to what degree it's successful, but again, that's something that at the company, we wouldn't necessarily be able to guarantee or stand behind getting that type of result. Do you have any parting words as far as credit restoration and for people who are out there that they definitely need the service? Maybe they find it out of their budget. What type of guidance do you have for those people as far as like the investment when it comes to credit restoration?
Call the 1-800 number. We're open 24 hours a day, and speak to a consultant, a sales rep. They're very informed about the entire process from beginning to end. Definitely do a free consultation on your credit file. Let them go through your file, and then that way you'll see the value and the reality of what needs to be done versus what you think needs to be done. As far as payment plans are concerned, we have different variety of payment plans, affordable. So we'll definitely work with you. And if you've seen us on Credit Plug, we'll definitely give you an additional discount.
You could definitely click the link in the description of the video, book a consultation, or you can call our 1-800 number. And we also have a text number as well that you could shoot us a text if you feel more comfortable doing that. But I appreciate it, Jason. Definitely appreciate you coming on, sharing some information. And again, don't forget, link in the description of the video, CP Restoration, the #1 credit restoration company in the United States.